A very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. This is Anand, editor, Dynamic Manufacturing India magazine, and this is the day 7 of Industry Samurai Conference and Awards. Today is a very, very special day in many, many aspects. One is that we have the awards presentation ceremony this evening from this afternoon from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. So do join in for that. And right now, the discussion and the guest that we're going to have makes this panel that we have makes this panel the highlight of the event. We have with us Dr. Ravi Prakash Mathur, who is the Vice President and Global Head of Logistics and Supply Chain Excellence at Dr. Reddy's Laboratories Limited, based at Hyderabad, India. A very, very warm welcome to you, Dr. Ravi Prakash Mathur. Before I hand it over to him, uh, let me quickly read his profile, his background. Dr. Mathur is a supply chain professional and a published author with more than 25 years of experience. He works in the areas of supply chain and digital transformation, integrated business planning, global logistics, and projects based on emerging digital technologies. He is a member of supply chain councils and on academic boards of business schools. He speaks regularly at international conferences and at top ranked universities in India. In 2020, he co-authored an academic paper titled Dr. Reddy's Laboratories Limited, Inventory Management Under Resource Constraints. And this was hosted by Harvard Business Publication Education and is also available on the HBR store. He was amongst the top 25 digitalist thought leaders of India announced by SAP ACE Awards in 2015. In 2014, he co-authored the book Quality Assurance in Pharmaceuticals and Operations Management and Industrial Safety. Dr. Mathur's doctoral thesis was about supply chain systems for international freight. After this introducing this illustrious background, I am going to turn to Dr. Mathur and invite him to speak on the topic of the impact of the pandemic on healthcare supply chain. A very warm welcome to you, Dr. Mathur.
Thank you, Anand. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for that very generous introduction. So let me congratulate you and Dynamic India Manufacturing Magazine for having chosen this topic as as a discussion point, for this particular event, and very pertinent. I think now it's almost 2 years we are into the pandemic, and started off with the lockdown, which really hit us out of the blue. No one actually was really prepared that the virus or the pandemic will kind of accelerate so fast, and then we were just looking at some WhatsApp videos of lockdowns in other parts of the country, other parts of the world. We didn't realize that very soon it's going to be us who's going to be under lockdown. So from the early days of the lockdown to the way economy has bounced back again, not only in India, also globally. The international trade is like at a very high level right now, which we see manifesting as very high freight rates. So it has been an exciting journey, and I think every passing month we have had to redefine our strategy and recalibrate our response. So that is my opening, comment to your to your question on the pandemic.
Absolutely, Dr. Mathur. And I think it's absolutely fitting that I ask the next question to you, being an expert in healthcare supply chain and also representing a company that is among the biggest names in pharmaceutical supply chain, in pharmaceutical industry in India and the world. Dr. Mathur, as you rightly mentioned, the last year and a half and close to 2 years, and we are still not out of the woods. The pandemic has affected everyone, and more so professionals in the pharmaceuticals and overall healthcare supply chain industry. So, Dr. Mathur, what in your experience uh, has been and how satisfactory or how good has been the response of healthcare supply chain and its stakeholders to the pandemic in the last 2 years?
Okay. Great question, Anand. And to answer that, what I'll do is I'll say break down that question into two parts. One was the early days of the pandemic, where everything had actually come to a standstill, and you would have heard a lot of experts talking about that, how to just get the basic things moving, like getting people to work into the factories, how to get your warehouses operational, how to get your factories operational, how do you get your material to the airports, how do you get drivers for your transport. There was a struggle even to the very basic logistics activities or to the operational activities. And I think the response at that level was required to be tactical, and which it was. And because when a scenario is changing every day, you really cannot have a very long term strategy or a very long term plan to deal with it. So one of the things that we did in dealing with that situation during that point was to adopt something that lean practitioners have been aware of for a very long time, and which they do on the shop floor, and apply it for continuous improvement programs. And the practice that I'm talking about is lean daily management. Now, lean daily management is something that has been around for a very long time, but the way we had to repurpose it and adopt it into a totally different context of logistics and supply chain, I think that was one innovation. Because if you slice the effort into multiple ways, say logistics activities from all origins, or logistics activities per trade lane, per SKU, per mode of shipment, and then you put in a daily mechanism of plan, do, check, and correct. So that entire cycle of planning, execution, monitoring, planning, execution, monitoring, you do it daily, on a daily basis. So that is something that helped us plan and ensure that our product is available, our warehouses are not choked at the manufacturing locations, our transit inventory is not piling up anywhere, and our markets are served. So that was something that we did to ensure that continuity was maintained, and there was no loss to either to the business, or nor were the patients were deprived of the medicine they need, so daily, on a daily basis. The other aspect is on the response on the COVID therapies per se, and also on the other collaborations that happened in the supply chain. So in the pharmaceutical industry, collaboration and partnership is a very important aspect, the way the network is set up by default. For example, you could be outsourcing your manufacturing to somebody, or you could be working with somebody else's intellectual development, or you could be out licensing your own particular know-how. But the challenge over here in the pandemic was that the entire cycle of getting a new drug out into the market, the entire cycle had to be shortened. The response has to be faster. So getting the licenses from the regulators, getting the technology transferred to wherever it had to be transferred, getting the validation done, getting the approvals, and then quick to market. So the entire cycle of launching a new product, and there were new therapies being approved, every passing day. So the response of very agile and very fast, way of getting to the customer. So that was something that we did. So that is what I would say the response was to the pandemic and to the lockdown in particular.
Dr. Mathur, I cannot help but ask this question because a lot of us in manufacturing and outside want to know from people who have fought this pandemic from the front lines, our healthcare professionals, our caregivers, and we owe a lot of debt to them. We owe a lot of gratitude to them, to you. So we want to know as to how did you cope up with the uncertainties, with the new information coming in, with the pandemic, because of a virus which very few of us knew about before this. How did you cope up? How did your team, how did your management team, and being at the helm of the supply chain team in your company, so how did you take in all this information, and how were you able to act day in and day out throughout these 2 years? So this is a lesson in management, and especially disaster management, for example, that we all need to hear from
you. I think not only for us, for many of us on the business side, I think what got registered, this is the new normal. Like, it might sound cliched, but the sooner you realize that you are in this for the long haul, it's not going to go away tomorrow or the next month. So and pharmaceutical being in the essential services. You really can't imagine shutting down your operations and say, this is a very unsafe or unsecure environment. We can't really go out to work. This is essential services. Medicines have to be produced, medicines have to be made available. So I think the response was, you shorten your review cycle. You take stock of things every day. You take stock of things 2 times a day, and then the things are changing. And even in the longer term, it's not that the entire globe is out of a lockdown altogether. At any point of time, some of your market will have a trade embargo, in terms of an airline embargo, capacity is not being available, or maybe there's a lockdown or some sort of restrictions are there. So continuous awareness of what is happening in each and every of your market, and then creating a response to it. The airline, the airline scenario still has not resolved itself. Like, it has been almost 2 years since the regular passenger flights have been discontinued globally, and what it means for a logistician like us is that the very space that was available for cargo is no longer available to move your freight around the globe. And the scenario keeps on changing. There are new solutions, they get introduced and they get withdrawn. So being agile, being aware, that is the way one has. There's no shortcut. It's a daily hard work, actually.
Well, kudos to you, doctor, and more power to you. I mean, a lot of us are still, reeling under the impact of this whole situation, and the way you've been able to handle it and professionally and everything else, it has been absolutely exemplary. So hats off to you and to your community. The next question also stems from the first one. It is about the vaccination and the cold chain management that happened in the last 2 years. There was a lot of talk about when the vaccines were being developed in India and around the world. There was a big discussion, debate around whether India's cold chain will be able to take these vaccines to the remotest corners of the country. And what the results that we see is that by and large, we have been successful, even if there are miles to go. What has been your experience of the vaccination process and the role of cold chain and its management in the whole thing?
That's a fantastic question, Anand. And that was the first question that people had. Will India be able to take care, and maintain the cold chain in the scale that we are talking about? And the vaccines that got developed earlier on abroad, they were like -70 vaccines, -20 vaccines. Of course, the vaccine that is most prevalently used right now in India is 228, the 228 vaccine. Now, having said that, even something as as commoditized as a 228 cold chain setup, when you add the complexity of scale to it, it is not really very easy. All of a sudden, the scale and also the speed. If you remember, at the peak of the vaccination drive, the number of doses that were being administered was more than 1 crore. Right now, just imagine if this is a 1 crore number that is there for the patient that is getting vaccinated. But start looking backward. For that 1 crore dose to reach the patient, those 1 crore doses were there at some point of time in a district warehouse. At some point of time, they were there in a regional warehouse. At some point of time, they were in a central warehouse. And before that, they were in the manufacturer's warehouse. Okay, so to start tracing a cold chain, which is aggregated, so to say around 10 crores in a central warehouse, to a few crores in a regional warehouse, and then all the way to the vaccination center, where your MOQ is around maybe 200 or 500 doses. So the level of disaggregation that is happening. So you really don't have a single cold chain solution which is applicable to each and every part of your supply chain node. What works for you at a central warehouse does not work for you in the end pharmacy or the doctor's general clinic or the primary health center where this vaccine is getting administered. There you have an MOQ of 200. Here you have an MOQ of 5,000. Here you have a passive solution, or an active solution, and there you have something which is working with dry ice, or something which is working with water-based, gel packs. So multiple nodes, disaggregation, reverse logistics. So I think the supply chain community came up together, and this calibrated, they created a response, very, very well. Now add to this the complexity of a -20 supply chain, which our vaccine was, then it becomes a even more interesting problem. Another aspect that you have to think about is that you don't really require a -20 infrastructure throughout throughout the life of your asset. So sooner or later, this pandemic and the requirement of these sort of products will go away. Then what do you do with infrastructure? How do you multi-purpose it? How do you dual purpose it? Can the same infrastructure be used later on for a 228 vaccine or a normal CRT vaccine? So these are some business questions that had to be answered, and then the entire design or the network, all the way from an aggregated level of a central warehouse to the last mile, where it is maybe moving around on a mobile freezer, in an SUV plugged to the power source of a car. Okay, so the design for the last mile, from the design for the first mile, two very different solutioning approaches. So you have to think end to end, and at the end you have to have a management layer or a digital layer on top of it that oversees the entire effort end to end. Your data loggers, your geo positioning, geo fencing, then get a system for your data retrieval, a system for data storage, archiving, everything, and early alerts, power backup. So it is a very complex thing that we had to set up, but I'm happy to share that yes, we were able to do it successfully.
Wow, it's incredibly fascinating. And I hope that all the lessons that have come up could be documented. So you are doing your part from the thesis and the books that you're writing. I hope that a lot more can be done in the form of case studies and white papers documenting the learnings and the insights that have come out of the situation. Doctor, our final question has to do also with the supply chain side. Now, very few people outside the pharma industry are aware that the pharma industry also has been impacted by the bullwhip effect. Now, people outside the pharma industry, came to know of this term through what happened during the holiday season, for example, around the world, around Christmas and the holidays, when suddenly the market, the shelves ran empty. Because of the increase in demand. So that was one impact of the bullwhip effect. The other impact was that the automotive industries, for example, ran out of chips, ran out of semiconductors, and their production has either been halted or has been delayed indefinitely. But within the pharma, very few people outside the pharma industry know that the bullwhip effect has been affecting the pharma industry in terms of the increase in demand of certain drugs like remdesivir and ivermectin, for example, or the change in guidelines from one therapy to another. So overall, what has been the effect of the bullwhip effect, and how has the industry been able to cope up with that?
Well, that's a very interesting question, Anand. Then thanks for asking that. Like a bullwhip, people visualize as a wave. Like something, and you put there's a spike at one end of this wave, and it actually amplifies. That is what is normally referred to in supply chain parlance as the bullwhip. But the dimension that I just want to add to this discussion over here is for you to visualize, start thinking about it in terms of waves. So, like we have had 2 waves in India, other parts of the world, there have been multiple waves, 3 waves or 4 waves. Think of every wave as a bullwhip. Every time there is a wave that hits you, there is an increase in demand. Okay, there's an increase in demand for the medicines. There's an increase in demand for the infrastructure, for ICU beds, for oxygen, for every support system that actually that is required to meet with the wave. But pharmaceuticals or any manufacturing for that matter, there are long lead times in some part of the chain. And so when you have something as of a COVID wave, which is a very steep curve, try to imagine what that means for a long lead time product. You all of a sudden, a particular therapy gets approved by the regulators as something that we are hoping will solve the problem, and there you are experiencing very intense demand for that particular product, but having to line it up all the way from raw material to finished goods and then make it out for distribution. So we have been dealing with multiple bullwhips. Waves themselves are inducing a bullwhip. the changing goalpost of therapies are creating a bullwhip. So you think that something is required and needs to be produced, then you all of a sudden realize that there is something else that is that is to be done. The third aspect of the bullwhip is, normally we think of bullwhip only from the demand side, but here the entire supply chains globally were disrupted, especially in the early days. So you don't have really a line of sight about predictability into your own supplies. So, but it's not all gloom and doom. These are challenges that we had to face, and these are challenges we addressed, and the challenges that we overcame. So it's not that what I'm trying to say is that the things entirely broke down and we were not able to respond. On the contrary, we were able to identify what was needed to be done, and I think the pharma sector did come up with a solid response.
Absolutely, absolutely, Dr. Mathur, and we have seen how in a much solid way, and so successfully it has been able to respond to this crisis. Sir, I want to ask a final question to wrap up this discussion, and it has two parts. The one is that in any adversity there are learnings, and this has been a once in a century pandemic. This has been unprecedented. Some of the things that have come out of this for other industries, for example, has been the increase in international collaborations, for example, on the research side. So I can share with you, for instance, in additive manufacturing, 3D manufacturing space, a lot of developers and innovators, shared their code, to the larger developer community. They didn't worry about licensing or this and that. So the R&D space increased a lot, for instance, in making essential supplies and ventilators, for instance. So that is one international collaboration. The speeding up of innovation process without compromising the quality, for instance, or the second part. What are the, I won't say benefits, but what are the learnings that have come out of this pandemic for the pharma supply chain sector? That is the first question. And the second, to wrap up the discussion, is, sir, that people are concerned about the waves that could be coming in the future. So should we expect that the pharma and the overall healthcare supply chain industry would be able to respond better to the waves as and when they come?
So the second part of your question, Anand, you're asking me to look into the crystal ball, gaze into it, and try to predict the future. But I guess, my guess is as good or as bad as your guess. But the only thing that I can assure is that whatever the response that is required, we will be doing it. The expertise is there, the know-how is there, the intent is there. Of course, what the future holds, we're just all of us are optimistic, and I hope we put this behind us very soon. And on your other aspect on the collaboration, which was the first part of your question, now it is not as simple as making it an open source code, and then making, even when licenses are available and free licensing is allowed or compulsory licensing is allowed, the other complexity here is of technology transfer. So every time you transfer the know-how or the intellectual property to a new entity or even to a new site within your own organization, the aspect of correctly and adequately transferring the technology and bringing it and having it compliant to all the regulatory and all the quality standards. So that is of paramount importance. So just the intent of sharing, of course, is good, but then you have to also understand that pharma is a highly quality aware and quality compliant industry, and so those aspects of compliance and quality and transfer of technology have to be kind of taken care of.
Sorry, thank you, Dr. Mathur. Admittedly, all of these questions coming from someone outside the pharmaceutical industry. A lot of that was based on the limited information that we have. Some of it was speculative also, and a lot of it was based on the concerns that we have outside the industry. Thank you for addressing these questions very succinctly and in the best way possible. That inspires that a lot of hope among us outside the supply chain, and that makes us a lot of more informed about the supply chain industry at large. You have a great day, sir. Thank you so much, and for participating in our conference.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Anand. It was a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you.
Take care, sir.